You wake up on a beach, naked and afraid. The only thing you have are a rock and a torch that you stashed away in your prison pocket. Aside from this, you have absolutely nothing. And worst of all, this is going to start again in a week or a month, or maybe if you're lucky, 2 months. You have just entered an addiction that will stick with you for the rest of your life. From now on, you will be trading hours of your life for pixels on a screen that some player will take away from you and then teabag you over. Or worse yet, you might not even know they've taken it until you log into the game and realize you've lost everything. This is Rust, and through the highest of highs and lowest of lows, I'm here to get you started with the 2023 Rust Beginner's Guide. This guide's going to work for the console edition Rust and the PC edition Rust because we're just going to be going over the basics right now, and that stays the same for both games. The first thing to note is how this game works. There's a bunch of servers. Some of them are going to be 2x servers where you get 2x the resources, 10x servers where you get 10x the resources, build servers where you start with everything and can just start building, or PvP servers where you start with a gun and you're supposed to shoot it out. These are all great for training up on, but what we're going to be covering here is just the official Rust server. These strategies will apply across all servers, but the official Rust servers are probably where you're going to start. So you've got weekly servers. Those are servers that wipe weekly. And then you've got monthly servers. Those are servers that wipe monthly. What a wipe entails is either you're going to have a non-blueprint wipe, and that's going to be where everything's wiped off the map. Your character starts from scratch, but you still have any blueprints that you've learned, and then a blueprint wipe. That's where everything's wiped off the map and you lose all of your blueprint knowledge. If you don't know, blueprints are how you learn things in Rust. But we're not going to be covering that now because that would be jumping ahead. So first off, you spawn onto the beach, you're naked, you're afraid, all you've got is a rock and a torch. The first thing you want to do is find a way to defend yourself and put down some sleeping bags. Why you need to defend yourself is pretty obvious, but why you need to put down sleeping bags might not be. What sleeping bags are is basically spawn points. If you get killed in the game, you can spawn to any sleeping bag that you've laid down. Rust maps are massive, so you want to lay down as many sleeping bags as you can, especially at the start. You might get killed, and the last thing you want to do is end up in a random location or back where you started. Because where you started is generally where all the newbies are, where you're just running around hitting each other with rocks and accomplishing nothing, which is pretty much your life at this point because you've started playing Rust. Anyways, the way this works is as you go lay down your sleeping bags, and you're going to have to get cloth to do that. So 30 cloth is what you need to lay down a sleeping bag, and if you're looking for a bow and an arrow, which you should be, you're going to need 50 cloth for that bow and 200 wood, and then you're going to need wood and stones to make the arrows. Now that you've got that down, let's go over how to get the resources. So when you spawn on a beach, the first thing you might want to do is knock down a tree or break open a stone node. You don't want to do this though. What you should be doing is popping open the map and finding a desolate looking place to call your own. This is going to be where you're going to build your base. The reason you want a desolate place is because you're going to need time to build that base, and you're not going to want to run into people trying to PvP every 2 minutes. Best way to find a desolate place is to find where all the monuments are and go where they are not. The reason I think that a beginner shouldn't be building a base by the monuments is because monuments tend to attract players. This is actually why developers put them in the game. You've got this huge map in Rust, and there's really no way to find other players unless you have central gathering points. These would be monuments. Some monuments, like the fishing village, the outpost, or the bandit camp, are safe monuments. This means that you can run into these monuments and your character is safe from being PvP'd or even killed by any of the environmental NPCs. So this would be animals or scientists. The bad thing about these monuments is it tends to attract a lot of players because they can also go there to recycle resources, which is a good way to get scrap, or to buy things out of the vending machine, or if you're on the PC, use drones to buy things out of other players' vending machines. Please note that the drones only exist at the outpost, not the bandit camp or the fishing village, although everything's always subject to change because Rust is an ever-evolving game. Now, when it comes to other monuments, these monuments tend to attract PvP. You've got tier 1 monuments, tier 2 monuments, and tier 3 monuments. Then there's also events that are going to happen at these monuments. If there's an event going on, you're going to have a lot more players PvPing there because there's a box dropping that has really good stuff. That's all you need to worry about. Tier 3 monuments drop tier 3 boxes or have tier 3 boxes. Those are fairly highly coveted by players, which means there's going to be a lot of high-level players running those monuments. Tier 2 monuments drop tier 2 boxes, and you're going to have a lot of medium-level players. They're just trying to run off those monuments because you can make a decent living off them. You can make a go at it. It's not as easy, it's not as fast, but you don't have as much competition. And tier 1 monuments are just going to be complete shit shows. There's going to be a bunch of people running around naked doing absolutely nothing except bashing each other's heads in with rocks. If you want to participate in that IQ lowering activity, feel free to, but it's not something that I'd recommend doing day in and day out. So if you build away from all these monuments, you don't have to worry about as many of these players stumbling across you. It still will happen, but this is the best way to have success early on and get used to how the game works, how the game plays, and how to farm things up and everything like that. So build away from these monuments. You can build by roads because while those are traveled by players, they typically just go in a straight line down those roads. And if you're even just half a square off, you're fairly safe. Also, one last note about the map, the desert tends to be hot, which means you need to wear less clothes in the desert. And the snowy areas or the mountainous areas tend to be cold, which means you need more clothes to survive in those areas. A lot of players won't build in these areas because of this fact, but for a new player, it's actually not a bad place to build. Generally, if another player sees you and you're new to the game, you're going to get killed anyways. So if the heat or the cold reduces your HP a little, it's probably not that big of a deal. So now that you've found your place to build, mark it on your map and head there. Straight line if you can, go around any big clan bases, any big monuments, but head there as quickly as possible. While you're running there, you're going to want to pick up cloth, which looks like this. You're going to want to pick up wood, stone, or pretty much anything that you can find on the ground. As you go, if you pick up food, eat it. You don't start with full HP, and you want to get to full HP as fast as possible. Once you've crafted your bow and laid down a few sleeping bags, now might be the time to start crafting bandages. If you don't have 100 HP from just eating food that you found on the ground, this is a good time to heal yourself up using bandages. Also, bandages can be used to stop bleeding. If you're shot running away from someone and you think you have a chance of escaping, bandages can stop you from dying just because you got shot once and you're slowly bleeding out. Remember that. It's going to be important as you go on in this game. So now you've picked everything up, you've got your bow, you've got your sleeping bags down, and hopefully you still have one sleeping bag. You're in the area that you want to build your base. First things first, put down your sleeping bag. Again, this is a nice little save point. At this point, if you die, at least you can start in the area that you wanted to start in. Now what you're going to want to do is take your rock and start knocking down a tree. Hit a tree, hit those axes, and once that tree falls, you're going to want to look around for one of these nodes. This would be a stone node. By the way, this is a metal node and this is a sulfur node. So once you find that node, hit it with a rock. Once you've broken the stone node, you're going to have some wood and some stone in your inventory. The first thing you want to do is craft a stone pickaxe. Using this pickaxe, you need to mine another stone node. Note that it's going to go faster than when you did it with a rock. Once you've mined that stone node, you're going to want to craft a stone hatchet. Now that you've got a stone hatchet and picks, you can use these to mine nodes or farm trees. Hatchets work for trees, and pickaxes work for stone nodes, or pretty much any rock node that you find. So this would be sulfur or metal as well. Please note that you should not stop at the stone pickaxe and hatchet. After that, you're going to be using a metal hatchet, which would just be called a hatchet, and a metal pickaxe, which would just be called a pickaxe. Some players after this will jump to a salvaged ice pick, but most people go right to a jackhammer and then a chainsaw. The jackhammer would be for rock nodes, and the chainsaw would be for trees. Duh. And if you want to make things even more complicated, you can get into teas. This guide isn't really for them because that's sort of a little bit more of an advanced concept, but you can look into them and they can make it so you can farm things at a faster rate. Now you're going to want to knock down some trees and craft the basics that you're going to need to build your first base. What you're going to need for that base is a tool cupboard, building plans, and a hammer. So what these are going to do is building plans allow you to build twig sort of structures. The hammer allows you to upgrade those twig structures, and the tool cupboard is sort of the center of any base. Whoever controls that tool cupboard has the ability to build on top of that base. What this means is if an enemy gets access to your tool cupboard, they can door you in, wall you in, do whatever they want, and then take their time raiding the rest of your base. And yes, raiding can happen at any time, anywhere, any place. There are systems that you can put into your base, so your phone will be alerted if this happens, but this is not the video for that. So what's going to happen now that you've got your tool cupboard, your building plan, and your hammer is you're going to put down your first square. Now you're going to put up your walls, and one of those walls should have a doorway on it. Put your tool cupboard into the base. You don't need to worry too much about spacing everything properly, but just know that for tool cupboards, it's best to put it on sort of a wall, as close to the wall as possible and as close to a corner as possible. The tool cupboard is one of the few things that you put down in a base and you can never move it again, unless you destroy it and then put down another tool cupboard. So put down the tool cupboard. You're going to want to craft up a lock. You probably should have done this beforehand, but this is your first time, so whatever. Put that lock on the tool cupboard, put your resources into the tool cupboard, and now you have a tool cupboard that's going to need to be destroyed for another player to get access to it. If you put a code lock on, you're going to put a code into that lock, and anyone who has that code has access to that lock. If you put a key lock on, you should be the only one using that key lock. Do not make keys. You don't need keys to open a key lock that you placed. The only reason you need keys is if you want to give someone else access to your key lock. That's a very important note that a lot of people mess up. So now that you've got a basically square box down, you're going to put a door on. Craft a door, craft a lock, put the door on, put the lock on. Now you've got a little box that is your own. Hopefully no one's going to be raiding it, but at this point you've got a wood door. Those are extremely easy to break. Also, twig walls are extremely easy to break, so you should be upgrading those with the hammer to wood or stone. Ideally, you go right from twig to stone because that uses the fewest resources. You don't get anything back when you upgrade, by the way, but if you have to, you can upgrade to wood. Twig takes a few hits to break, wood takes a lot more, and stone takes even more. Generally, once you get up to stone, people aren't going to bother to raid through your walls unless you've got like a really confusing base or something like that. Once you get up to stone, if you got a 2x1, they're going in through the doors. So what we've got to do with the doors is upgrade them to metal. But before we do that, we've got to build out this base so you have a little bit more room for activities, specifically refining metal ore. So what you're going to do to build out your base is put a square right next to the square where your door opens into it, like this. Put the walls around that, put a door frame right here, and now you're going to be building an airlock. An airlock would be a triangle foundation with a door on the other side. So you're going to have 2 doors leading into that airlock, and then you're going to have 1 stone wall, or 1 twig wall, and then you're going to upgrade it to stone. The stone wall should be on your left, and on your right should be the door frame. That's going to make it so that if you've got single doors, they open into each other if you place them correctly, and that makes it impossible for someone to enter your base, even if, for whatever reason, you've opened up both doors. But you shouldn't do that, because this is how airlocks generally work. As long as only 1 door is ever open at a time, even if you get killed with a door open, or you die with the door open, or you have a heart attack and you want to get back into the game later and your door was open when you did it, you're going to be fine, because there's still 1 more door for players to go through. So anytime you open a door, you should be closing that door before you open the adjacent door, if that makes sense. Also, at this point, you should be putting ceilings on. I don't know how high your IQ needs to be to realize that, but if it's a little below average, make sure there's ceilings, upgrade those to stone as well. And now you've got a basic base. It's got some wood doors. It's going to keep people away, but it's not going to last. So how do we make it last? What you're going to need to do is to mine metal ore. So you mine your metal ore, and then what you're going to need to do is build a furnace. To build a furnace, you're going to need 100 wood, 200 stone, and 50 low grade. So we've gone over how to get the stone and the wood, but now let's go over low grade. So low grade is something that can be gotten from the red barrels, or you can take oil and refine it to low grade, or you can kill animals, use the animal fat and the cloth to craft low grade. Depending on where you are, one or all of these methods might be easiest. It really depends. To run over things, basically, if you're near a road, you can break open a few red barrels. You'll probably get enough low grade for a furnace. If you're not near a road in the middle of nowhere, you can kill animals, and in 1 or 2 kills, you're probably going to have enough for a furnace. In the case of a bear, you can do it in 1 kill, but they're pretty hard to kill. And in the case of your base being near monuments, you can go to a lot of monuments and find a refinery. Not all monuments have it, but a monument like the harbor is a really good one to find refineries at, because people don't typically traffic that monument, and there's refineries there. A refinery works, you give it oil, you give it wood, and out pops low grade. So now I'm assuming you've got your furnace. Where do you go from here? You've got to go out and mine metal nodes. They look like this. Also, sulfur nodes look like this. We've gone over this before, but I keep repeating it just because that's something that a lot of players take some time to figure out. It works with these 2 specific sort of nodes, is you're going to get raw products. So you're going to get either metal ore, you're going to get sulfur ore, or you're going to get high quality ore. The high quality stuff that comes at the end when you break a metal node for completion, so that's when you get that like big bonus amount of materials. That's also going to give you some high quality in the case of a metal node. Nodes would be rocks, basically. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to take the metal ore, because that's what you're refining at this time, put those into your furnace, put in the wood, start refining. This is going to get you metal fragments. You can use those metal fragments to craft a metal door. Now what you're going to need to do to switch out a wood door for a metal door is unlock your lock, take off that lock. Now you're going to need to take off the door. And once you've got the door off, you're going to put on the metal door and put the lock on top of that. Locks should automatically lock, but make sure they're red because every now and then there's a bug in the game or something just weird happens. And there you go, you've upgraded to metal doors. At this point, you're safe to log off from the game. Also, one thing I did forget to note, I'm probably gonna put this in text somewhere earlier in the video, put a sleeping bag down in your base. That's just gonna make it easier. Also, as you start gathering more and more materials, use a small box at first, and now that you've got metal, you're going to use a large wooden box. And these are going to be to store things that you find and want to keep. All of your resources should fit in your tool cupboard at this point, or otherwise known as a TC, but anything else should go into those boxes because you don't want to be running around with too much loot because all you're doing is giving another player some of your hard-earned time when they kill you. So yeah, now we're getting a little deep in the guide, so I'm just going to go over a few other things, and then we're going to call it a day because I've already given you a little too much information for beginner. So first off, what you need to do next is craft a level 1 workbench. You can use this workbench to research items. If you have an item and you want to research that item, what you're going to need to do is go to your workbench, and within a one sort of grid area, if you're standing in front of your workbench, you can craft any sort of tier 1 gear. So what you're going to do is you're going to craft a blueprint table. You can put items into this blueprint table, put a sort of specified number of scrap into the blueprint table with this item. You process it, you're going to get a blueprint, you research that blueprint, and now you can make that item. If it's a tier 1 item, you need a tier 1 workbench to make that item. After tier 1 workbench, you've got a tier 2 workbench, and you're going to use that to make tier 2 items or to use that tech tree, that's going to be that tree that you see, to research tier 2 items. And finally, you've got a tier 3 workbench, which you're going to use to research tier 3 items via the tech tree or to build tier 3 items. So that would be how workbenches work, and generally what players do is they're going to run monuments, they're going to collect scrap, they're going to collect items, they're going to use the scrap to research things that they want to learn, and then they're going to use whatever else they've collected from the monuments to craft the items that they've learned via blueprints. And yeah, you just sort of rinse and repeat the cycle. You get addicted to the game, you waste 10,000 hours, and then you realize that you're an expert in Rust instead of something that could actually make you money. But yeah, that is Rust in a nutshell. That's the 2023 Rust Beginner's Guide. I could go more in depth with things, but I don't want to make this a 2-hour video or anything like that. A few other notes that I'll leave you with is teas are very useful. Use a mixing table to make teas. They can increase the rate that you farm, give you more health, or make it so that you regenerate health when you've lost health. All these things are really good. If you want to get better at PvP, you need to learn the recoil and just play on PvP servers. Game sense has a lot to do with it, but learning recoil can go a long way as well. My opinion is that game sense over recoil, but a lot of players would disagree with that. And finally, don't have gear fear. A lot of players hold on to their gear until someone raids their base and takes all the fun away from them. Go out, use that gear sporadically, and lose it, because that's part of the Rust experience. It's all about getting gear, going out and farming, getting other players, having a story. And if your story is just I collected everything in a base and got raided, that sucks. If you made it this far and liked the guide, make sure you hit subscribe. If you didn't like the guide or I missed something, let me know down below. Otherwise, until next time, peace.